The Gladiators are one of the most interesting examples, in my opinion. So, remember what I keep saying. In 2018, you could only sign 1+1 contracts. So, Big Goose, at the end of 2018, would have had a team option for 2019. But instead, he and... Decay is a brand new addition, but he and Shaz renegotiated. Let's look at him and Shaz, for starters. Him and Shaz, Big Goose and Shaz, renegotiated at the beginning of 2019 another 1+1, essentially, right? So 2018, they were guaranteed. At the beginning of 2019, they could have just been on an option. Instead, they renegotiated with the Gladiators and had 2 guaranteed years, and now the 2020 season is their option. That means that the Gladiators can choose whether or not they pick them up afterwards. For Hydration and for Surefour, they didn't renegotiate. They either didn't or weren't offered the opportunity, but I think because Hydration and Surefour are both good players and both highly valued, they probably made the decision themselves to not renegotiate at the beginning of 2019 and to become free agents now and try and earn big value on the open market. That's what I would suspect. I've been told that Hydration has already been offered an offer from another team, and I don't know what team it is, and it was a fairly high offer. We're talking just underneath what Sinatra was paid for his first salary, so just underneath 150K. I'm not going to tell you the exact amount that was told to me, but that's one of the initial offers. So you can see how being a free agent at this period of time, like Surefour and like Hydration are, is potentially a very lucrative situation to be in. Because you get different teams trying to bid for you because they want your skill on Pharah, they want your skill on, like your flexibility on Wrecking Ball, on Roadhog. They want your ability to play the Doomfist and all of that kind of stuff. So they're willing to pay you a decent amount. Surefour, I imagine, is in a similar scenario, but both of these players could still be re-signed by the Gladiators, right? They just, because they're a free agent on the market, they now open themselves up to a bit of a bidding war. They can say to the Gladiators, hey, if you want to keep hold of me, you have to match, I'm trying to think of a brand new city. You have to match the Dublin Buccaneers offer of whatever the amount would be. Like, say somebody offered him like 140K, you'd be like, yo, Gladiators, you have to match or beat 140K, otherwise I'll go and sign with them. So whatever your situation is, if your stock is actually pretty high right now, like Hydration and like Surefour's are, then you could potentially get a lot of money on the open market and end up moving elsewhere. Void being a free agent is also kind of interesting because I wouldn't have thought that he thought his stock would be really high at the end of this season. And I don't know whether his stock is particularly high. If I was, trying to think of great off-tanks, Void is not one that really springs to mind, despite the fact that statistically he did perform incredibly well this year. But he seemed like the kind of player where I looked at his stats and I was like, man, it's weird that his stats are this good, because when I watch him play, he doesn't look that great. He looks all right, but he doesn't look incredible. But it's possible that Void will either get re-signed or will go somewhere else for a significant amount too. What else? There's a lot of flexibility here if the Gladiators want to make changes. If they want to continue to build around this backline of Big Goose and Shaz, they have the option to. They can pick them up for the same amount as they paid them in 2019. If they want to allow Hydration and Surefour to go elsewhere and rebuild their DPS lineup, maybe with like another Korean player to go alongside Decay and Raw, they totally could. There's a lot of different ways that Gladiators can pivot coming into next season. And I think Gladiators will pivot fairly largely, like to a large degree. Because you look at the changes that they've made to their coaching staff as well, and the Gladiators coaches, I believe, are also free agents. You know, the head coach David and this kind of stuff. These guys were released at this kind of time. So I think that, and also the Rams group, like the people that own the Rams, what are they called? The Cronkies? Is it the Cronkies that own the Gladiators? I think. Split with the Sentinels, which was the organization that was running the team for them. So this could also indicate a big difference in vision for the future for the Gladiators. All speculation, of course, but certainly a possible direction. This team might be full Korean. They might just choose to build around Raw and Decay. Who knows? So I think the Gladiators are one of the most interesting teams coming into next season because they have the potential to lose two of their biggest stars, and they have a lot of flexibility with their contracts to be able to pivot in a lot of different ways. Okay, let's take a look at the LA Valiant. The LA Valiant is a fairly standard team. They all renegotiated at the beginning of 2019. They changed a bunch of people. They rebuilt the team. They're looking forwards to the future with their new head coach. I don't expect them to make many coaching changes. I don't expect them to make many roster changes, but I do expect them to make a couple for reasons that I won't discuss in this video. But yeah, it's all fairly bog standard. Let's move on to the London Spitfire, because this one is really interesting. So the biggest one is that Birdring is a free agent. So let's tackle this one first. Before we go on to talking about Guard or Nuss or any of this kind of stuff, let's talk about Birdring. He did not renegotiate in 2019, right? Because otherwise he would still be either under contract or on option in 2019. What does this seem to indicate? I think it's probably a combination of a player and team decision. His performance wasn't very good, so I could imagine the team not really wanting to extend his contract and give him a big pay raise. They'd rather just keep him on his initial salary and have him be a free agent at the end of 2019. But also, from what I've heard and gathered from interviews and from talking to the coaching staff and talking to people around the London Spitfire and stuff, Birdring just doesn't seem to be particularly motivated. We saw all of this drama at the end of this season about, the social media person for the London Spitfire tweeting, what was it? Imagine getting knocked out of the playoffs because of one young boy's attitude or something. XD, XD, XD. I don't know what the exact phrasing of it was, but yeah, I mean, I can imagine there was a lot of frustration within that team if somebody like Birdring just decided to bench himself or caused some kind of internal difficulties to the point where he couldn't be fielded. Especially because during the play-ins, he actually played pretty well on the Doomfist. Had a good mind for it. So, it seems interesting to me that Birdring is a free agent, but certainly not surprising in any sense. Now, this opens up London Spitfire, though, to some big opportunities to sign replacements. There are people in the league who are phenomenal at the hit scan kind of role. I mean, Carpe is a free agent that we'll be able to get to later on. DM for the Shanghai Dragons would be an outrageous fit on the London Spitfire. There are a bunch of people in contenders that might be decent fits as well. But London have an opportunity to really level up this position. Like, Birdring was okay, but he was nowhere near what you would expect from the name value that Birdring had from how he performed in 2017. There are so many amazing players that would perform better than Birdring. So I'm glad that he ended up being a free agent, and we'll see what he ends up doing. I suspect that he'll move down to contenders or possibly retire, because I don't really think that his head is in it. Now, the same could be said about Nuss, because Nuss was on the team during their championship run in 2018, but didn't renegotiate. Nuss is not a star player. It seems crazy to me that Nuss would not renegotiate if he had the option to, because he's not going to get a big payout at the end of this year as a free agent. I don't think he's going to have a lot of people bidding over him. So this indicates to me that the team was always planning to go in a different direction and rebuild around their classic trio of Gesture, Fury, and Prophet, who are all under contract, but also Badoshin, who's their shot caller. Now, I don't know whether it's a mistake to continue with Badoshin. Badoshin's incredibly talented, but the issue with the London Spitfire has been that they are either their coaches aren't good or they're difficult to coach. Because, you know, they fired a couple of head coaches and moved the order of coaches around quite a lot. And they've recently released another coach as well. And then also the players are very highly skilled, but they don't put much thought into their teamwork or how they understand metas and this kind of stuff. So there's a lot that can be improved in that aspect. Badoshin is their shot caller, their primary caller for this team. And the fact that you're keeping him on the team, along with Gesture, who's their secondary shot caller as well, means that this team will probably have the exact same style, no matter who else you plug into it. So all you're really doing is leveling up the individual talent. Was individual talent ever the problem with the London Spitfire? No. So is this going to be successful? Who knows? Maybe not. I think you might have the most success kind of exploding London and putting the pieces back together in a very different way. Like maybe only keeping Prophet, Gesture, and Fury. Maybe only keeping Prophet and Fury. And plugging in a lot of other people around them, including some very strong shot callers, either from the Contenders region or from other teams. Now, Krillin is the other really interesting one. Because while Nuss and Guard and Birdring are free agents, and Quatermain is on a team option, which makes sense, Krillin is part of this god squad of people that they've decided to keep on. Why? He was super unproven when he came into the league, and he's basically never played, and yet they're keeping him on a long guaranteed contract. They either really believe in him, or they just don't give a fuck, and he's just there to fill in if Badoshin falls off a scooter. It might also be because he's cheap, yeah. He could have signed a 2+1 for very cheap. But my question mark would be, why do you sign someone so unproven like Krillin to a 2+1 contract? He is probably very cheap. And they just decide that it's worth it for the backup.